In the dusty archives of a forgotten library in Belgrade, a discovery was made that would shake the foundations of modern science and spirituality alike. A manuscript, hidden for 92 years, contained the transcript of an interview with one of history's most brilliant minds, Nikola Tesla. This wasn't just any interview. It was a conversation that powerful institutions had deliberately kept from public view since 1931. I've spent my life studying the connections between science and consciousness, but nothing prepared me for what I discovered in those yellowed pages. The date on the manuscript read June 17, 1931, just 6 years before Tesla's death. The interviewer was a journalist from a now-defunct magazine called Modern Mystic. What makes this document extraordinary isn't just Tesla's scientific insights, it's his shocking revelations about the nature of human consciousness and what happens when we die. They will try to silence this, Tesla had apparently told the interviewer. What I'm about to tell you contradicts the materialist paradigm that governs our scientific institutions. But my experiments have left no room for doubt. As I carefully turned each fragile page, I could almost hear Tesla's distinctive voice, his accent coloring words that seemed to bridge the gap between rigorous science and profound spiritual truth. Tesla wasn't speaking as a mystic or religious figure. He was applying his brilliant scientific mind to the greatest mystery of human existence. I have spent decades studying electromagnetic fields and energy transmission, Tesla stated in the interview. During this research, I've made accidental discoveries that point to something profound. Consciousness is not generated by the brain. Rather, the brain acts as a receiver of consciousness, much like a radio receives signals from elsewhere. The interviewer had asked him to elaborate, clearly shocked by this assertion from the inventor of alternating current. Think about it this way, Tesla continued. When your radio breaks, does the music cease to exist? Of course not. The broadcast continues. Only your device's ability to receive it has failed. I believe death is similar. The brain ceases functioning, but the consciousness it was receiving continues to exist in what I call the primary energetic field. What makes this document so controversial is not just Tesla's claims, but the scientific observations he cited to support them. He described experiments involving electrical stimulation of specific brain regions that produced what he called temporary consciousness displacement, experiences where test subjects reported awareness existing outside their physical bodies. Most striking was Tesla's claim that he had developed a device sensitive enough to detect traces of this consciousness field and measure its fluctuations when a person died. The energy doesn't dissipate, he insisted. It transforms and transitions to another state of existence. Perhaps most disturbing was the final page of the transcript, which bore a large stamp reading "Classified National Security Concern" and a handwritten note. All copies to be confiscated and research terminated immediately by order of... The name had been deliberately inked out. The second part of Tesla's forbidden interview delves deeper into his revolutionary understanding of consciousness and the afterlife, revelations that powerful institutions deem too dangerous for public knowledge. According to the manuscript, Tesla had created something beyond anything science had acknowledged possible, a device that could detect the subtle energetic patterns of consciousness as it separated from the physical body. In my laboratory on Long Island, Tesla explained, I constructed what I call an etheric resonance detector. The principles behind it are complex, but essentially, it measures perturbations in the ambient electromagnetic field that occur when consciousness transitions from its physical housing. The interviewer, clearly skeptical, asked how Tesla could possibly verify such measurements. Tesla's response was both methodical and unsettling. I arranged with 3 hospitals to place my devices near patients in terminal conditions, with full consent from their families, of course. What we recorded was remarkable. At the moment of clinical death, there was a consistent surge in a specific frequency range, between 8 and 12 Hz initially, followed by a rapid shift to approximately 30 Hz before the signal appeared to leave our measurable dimension entirely. Tesla paused before adding, but that wasn't all. In 17% of cases, we detected residual patterns lingering for days. Most fascinating were the cases where these patterns briefly intensified when family members entered the room and spoke the deceased's name. The manuscript reveals that Tesla had conducted over 200 such observations by 1931, compiling extensive data that pointed to one shocking conclusion. Consciousness doesn't end with death, it transitions. What orthodox science calls death is merely a transformation, Tesla stated firmly. The essential energy pattern that constitutes your unique consciousness simply shifts from one vibrational state to another. It's physics, not mysticism, though I understand why religious traditions have intuited this reality for millennia. The interview then took an even more controversial turn when Tesla described what he called cross-dimensional communication experiments. He claimed to have developed rudimentary methods for detecting signals from what he termed post-physical consciousness states. I've recorded anomalous electromagnetic patterns that demonstrate non-random, organized information transfer from sources that no longer exist in our physical dimension. The patterns are too structured to be dismissed as random noise, and they respond intelligently to specific stimuli. When pressed for details about what these communications revealed about the other side, Tesla became surprisingly philosophical. The state of consciousness after physical transition appears to be initially determined by the energetic patterns established during life. Those who lived with tremendous fear and attachment experience a corresponding vibrational state afterward. Those who cultivated higher awareness seem to transition to more harmonious states. It's not reward or punishment, it's resonance physics. Perhaps most troubling to the authorities, who later classified the interview, was Tesla's assertion that consciousness could be deliberately cultivated to ensure optimal transition. Through specific exercises involving attention, electromagnetic exposure, and what I can only call conscious energy direction, individuals can prepare their consciousness for this transition. In my observations, those who practice these techniques experience markedly different patterns during transition, cleaner, more coherent signals that maintained integrity rather than dispersing. According to marginal notes on the manuscript, this section particularly alarmed government officials. One notation reads, "Potential mass destabilization of religious social control systems. Priority containment required." The interview transcript shows that Tesla understood the implications of his discoveries. This knowledge threatens entrenched power structures, both religious institutions that monopolize afterlife narratives and materialist scientific establishments that deny non-physical reality entirely. Neither will welcome evidence that consciousness transcends physical death, yet operates according to natural, comprehensible principles rather than supernatural dictates. Sure, in the margins of this page appears another disturbing note: subjects' laboratory to be acquired and research materials confiscated under National Security Directive. No public acknowledgement. What happened in the years following this interview becomes clear through fragmentary evidence. Tesla's financial support mysteriously evaporated. His most advanced research disappeared from his laboratory, and his ideas about consciousness were systematically ridiculed until history remembered only his electrical innovations, not his most profound discovery: the scientific evidence for life beyond death. The third section of Tesla's suppressed interview explores his detailed scientific framework for understanding consciousness beyond death, a perspective that merges rigorous electromagnetic theory with what most would consider spiritual concepts. What makes these revelations so extraordinary is not their mystical nature, but rather how Tesla approached the afterlife as a physicist examining natural phenomena. The fundamental error in our understanding of consciousness, Tesla explained, is the assumption that it is generated by the brain rather than received by it. My research demonstrates that consciousness exists as part of a universal field that permeates all space, what ancient traditions might call the cosmic consciousness, but what I measure as specific oscillations in the electromagnetic spectrum beyond our conventional instrumentation. Tesla described experiments where he had isolated what he called consciousness frequencies that appeared to operate independently of normal electromagnetic waves. These frequencies behave unlike anything in conventional physics, he noted. They demonstrate non-locality, affecting paired systems instantaneously across any distance. They show signs of temporal flexibility, sometimes registering effects before their causes. Most importantly, they persist when the physical body ceases functioning. The interview transcript reveals that Tesla had mapped what he believed were 7 distinct density states of consciousness, with our physical existence representing just the 3rd density. Death is merely the transition from 3rd to 4th density, Tesla stated. The consciousness pattern retains its essential coherence but operates at a higher frequency. This explains why those who have experienced temporary death report expanded awareness and the dissolution of time constraints. Tesla then described his most controversial experiment, one where he claimed to have developed a method for temporary consciousness projection. Using precisely calibrated electromagnetic fields focused on specific brain regions, I've enabled subjects to temporarily shift their conscious awareness outside their physical bodies. Their descriptions upon return are remarkably consistent. They report moving through a tunnel-like vortex, encountering a boundary of light, and experiencing a state of expanded knowing that makes our normal awareness seem like seeing through a keyhole. According to Tesla, these experiences weren't hallucinations, but actual shifts in consciousness receptivity. When properly measured, we detect a measurable reduction in certain brain activities simultaneous with reported out-of-body states. The consciousness doesn't disappear. It shifts its focal point. The manuscript reveals that Tesla had mapped what he called the topography of afterlife states, based on thousands of collected accounts and his own electromagnetic measurements. The initial transition typically involves a release from physical limitation and a review of one's life experiences, not as judgment, but as integration. This is followed by a period of adjustment to non-physical existence. Subsequently, the consciousness gravitates toward vibrational states that match its own frequency, explaining why similar consciousness patterns tend to cluster in post-physical dimensions. What troubled authorities most, according to marginalia in the manuscript, was Tesla's insistence that these states followed natural laws rather than religious doctrines. Heaven and hell are not places but states of consciousness operating at different vibrational frequencies, Tesla explained. The consciousness naturally resonates with fields of similar frequency. Those who cultivated love, compassion, and expanded awareness gravitate toward higher frequencies, while those dominated by fear, hatred, and contraction experience corresponding lower frequency states. Tesla claimed his measurements had detected what he called consciousness clusters on the other side, groupings of similar frequency patterns that explained why many near-death experiences include meetings with deceased loved ones. Consciousness patterns that shared resonant frequencies during physical existence naturally reconnect in post-physical states. This explains the consistent reports of reunions with those who have passed before. Most remarkable was Tesla's description of what he termed the universal return circuit, a process whereby consciousness eventually has the opportunity to reintegrate with physical reality. My measurements suggest consciousness patterns can reconfigure and return to physical expression, retaining subtle frequency signatures from previous existences. This is not mystical reincarnation, but a natural cycle of energy expression and integration, consciousness evolving through successive physical and non-physical experiences. The final pages of this section contain Tesla's most direct challenge to establish power structures. The afterlife is neither mysterious nor supernatural. It is a natural continuation of consciousness operating according to principles we can understand and eventually navigate consciously. Death is not an ending, but a transition we can prepare for scientifically. A margin note next to this passage, apparently written by a government official, reads, "Extreme danger to established order. Knowledge that death is a navigable transition rather than final judgment or oblivion undermines both religious and state control mechanisms. Maximum containment required." The suppression that followed effectively erased Tesla's consciousness research from history, until now. As these lost pages finally come to light, we must ask ourselves, what might humanity have become had we embraced Tesla's discoveries about our eternal nature nearly a century ago? What makes these teachings so powerful is how they transform abstract concepts into actionable knowledge that anyone can apply to their own consciousness journey. I have come to understand that what we call life and death are merely different vibrational states of the same fundamental energy, Tesla explained. The consciousness that animates your physical form is neither created at birth nor extinguished at death. It is an eternal current that flows through different mediums of expression. Tesla then outlined what he called the 7 principles of consciousness cultivation. practices he had developed based on his electromagnetic research that he believed could prepare one's consciousness for optimal transition. First, understand that consciousness responds to focused attention. Where you direct your awareness repeatedly creates strong resonance patterns that persist beyond physical death. Those who spend their lives focused on fear, hatred, or material acquisition create corresponding resonance patterns that limit their experience in post-physical states. The second principle involved what Tesla called frequency elevation, a practice of consciously raising one's dominant vibrational state through specific meditation techniques combined with exposure to certain electromagnetic frequencies. I've measured how consciousness patterns can be deliberately shifted toward higher coherence through rhythmic breathing, synchronized with specific thoughts. These practices literally change the electromagnetic signature of your consciousness field, preparing it for expanded awareness after transition. Tesla's third principle addressed the phenomenon of consciousness attachments, the energetic bonds we form with others, with possessions, with beliefs, and with our own physical bodies, create tethers that can restrict consciousness movement after transition. Learning to love without attachment and to hold beliefs without rigidity prepares consciousness for freer movement between dimensions. The fourth principle described techniques for what Tesla called boundary dissolution, practices for temporarily experiencing states beyond normal physical awareness while still alive. Through specific breathing patterns combined with electromagnetic stimulation of the pineal gland, one can experience consciousness beyond physical limitations. These experiences serve as transition training, reducing the shock and disorientation that typically accompanies the death transition. Tesla's fifth principle focused on what he termed pattern integration, resolving fragmented or conflicted aspects of one's consciousness before death. Unresolved emotional patterns create turbulence in the consciousness field that persists after physical transition. By consciously identifying and harmonizing these patterns during life, one ensures a more coherent and expansive after-death state. The sixth principle outlined practices for maintaining awareness during the transition itself. Most humans experience death unconsciously, but this is not necessary. Through specific training, one can maintain continuous awareness throughout the transition, avoiding the confusion and disorientation most experience. Tesla's final principle addressed what he called return integration, the process of carrying awareness from higher dimensions back into physical expression. The ultimate mastery is to move consciously between physical and non-physical states, retaining the expanded awareness of higher dimensions while functioning in material reality. This represents the culmination of consciousness evolution. What makes these teachings particularly significant is how Tesla connected them to broader human potential. What religions have called enlightenment, salvation, or liberation is simply the conscious mastery of these transition states. The techniques I've developed merely accelerate a natural evolutionary process. According to margin notes, this section of the interview particularly alarmed authorities because it democratized transcendent experiences previously controlled by religious institutions. One note reads, "Subject provides practical methodology for spiritual experiences, independent of established channels. High risk of mass authority disruption." In the final pages, Tesla addressed the deliberate suppression he anticipated. They will attempt to silence these discoveries because conscious humans are harder to control. Knowledge that we are eternal consciousness, temporarily experiencing physical limitation, threatens power structures dependent on fear, particularly fear of death. Tesla concluded with a message that seems directed toward future generations. Remember that what appears as supernatural is simply natural phenomena, not yet understood. The consciousness that perceives these words is not confined to your brain or body. It is an eternal current temporarily flowing through physical circuitry. When that circuitry eventually fails, you will not cease to exist. You will continue, aware and intact, experiencing new dimensions of reality. The manuscript's final page bears an ominous stamp, permanently restricted, Level 9, clearance only, and a handwritten note, all experimental devices to be destroyed. No research in this direction to be permitted within any government-funded institution. Disinformation campaign regarding subjects' mental stability to be implemented immediately. And so Tesla's most profound discovery was hidden from humanity for nearly a century, until now. As you absorb these teachings, remember, the consciousness reading these words is not bound by the physical form it currently animates. You are not a body temporarily possessing consciousness. You are consciousness temporarily experiencing a body. And in that eternal truth lies your ultimate freedom. If Tesla's suppressed knowledge has awakened something within you, a recognition of your own eternal nature, don't let this revelation end here. This is merely the beginning of your journey toward understanding the true nature of consciousness. Subscribe now to continue exploring these hidden truths that powerful institutions have kept from humanity for nearly a century. Each week, we delve deeper into the science of consciousness beyond death, revealing techniques for your own spiritual evolution that Tesla discovered decades before their time. Leave a comment below sharing your own experiences with consciousness beyond the physical. Have you glimpsed the other side? Felt the presence of those who have transitioned? Your story contributes to the collective awakening that Tesla envisioned. Remember, knowledge this transformative spreads only through those brave enough to share it. Subscribe, comment, and join our community of consciousness explorers. The eternal current flows through us all.